All right, well here it is. The engine's crated, loaded, and heading west. You know, weeks of measuring, machining, rebuilding, restoring. It's ready to go. It's ready to go. I'm excited. You know, but there's always something a little final about seeing it in the crate. But that's also the rewarding part. This is the last episode of the 910 blueprinting series. I'm going to walk you through the final camshaft setup, showing you around the completed motor, and I'm going to take you through how it was packed up for the road. You've got to remember, when this engine arrived, it came fully disassembled, which for a lot of Lotus cars of this era, that's not unusual. And I mean, honestly, I don't really mind that at all, because it saves me from having to break it down myself and then run the risk of snapping off every other stud in the process, or bolt for that matter, which happens. So, but I get to skip right to the inspection stage. I get to lay everything out and start figuring out what's usable, what's not, and what's about to cause me a major headache too, right? So, yeah, there were a few missing components on this engine, and a few that have been clearly revised by others over the years, but you know, nothing unexpected. These motors all have stories. So many of us have turned wrenches on these motors or watched somebody else try. And we know what that looks like, so I started with the basics. Clean, sort, inspect, figure out what's needing attention, and from there, it's just all about, you know, dialing things in. So I went through every critical measurement on this engine, from the crank clearances, the rod bearings, the ring gaps, the liner nip, the camshaft end float. You know, these aren't numbers you just want to eyeball on these motors, especially on a Lotus engine. You get them right, or unfortunately you deal with the consequences later. So the rotating assembly, the crank, the rods, the flywheel, pressure plate, all that stuff is balanced. We don't do it to chase horsepower. On these motors, we do that to make sure the engine runs smooth. It revs clean, and it doesn't feel like it's trying to shake itself apart when you're driving down the road, because it will feel like that. You know, we also went through the oil pump, the Bosch mixture control unit, the throttle bodies, basically anything that affects how this motor breathes, delivers fuel, or builds pressure, got proper attention. And you know, it's time consuming, but it makes all the difference in the final result. That's the technical stuff. Now, the cool stuff. Cosmetically and mechanically, every piece was addressed. Everything was vapor blasted. Everything was vapor blasted. Beautiful aluminum finishes now. All the hardware was replated. The fuel lines, we had to fabricate those using the proper fuel line and the proper fittings for the Bosch system. Those are unavailable now. You can't get them. So reconstruction is the only option. And they're not super easy to do. They're not hard, but you got to have the right stuff. Yeah, I built the shipping crate that you see behind me as well. Braced it, padded, bolted down, you know, like it's ready to go cross country, because who knows what's going to happen on the way. I've been doing this stuff for quite a while now, and you know, I don't fit into the typical engineer mold. I care about the numbers, sure, but I care just as much about the way it all feels, the sound, the smoothness, the way it responds when you hit the throttle. That's what I'm after. And the look, I want them to look fantastic. You know, these 910s, they're light, they're responsive, and when they're built right, they're genuinely special engines. You feel the hand-built nature of the car, but with a little extra refinement. That's the space that I like to work in, just a little bit more. So, between originality and improvement. All right, so in this final episode, we'll finish shedding the camshaft end float. We'll take care of a few last-minute details, and then I'll walk you through the engine up close, so you can actually see how it all came together before it gets crated for the trip out west. She's ready to go. Ships out tomorrow. So let's take one last look before it hits the road, all right? Let's get started. All right, this morning we're moving on to the cam carriers. We're going to check the end float on the cam carriers. And to do this, I need a dial gauge. So I've got an adjustable set up here, and I've got it clamped to the camshaft housing, and I've got my dial gauge on the end of the camshaft. It's sort of set to 0. It seems to be bouncing around a little bit, but that's okay because I'm just looking for a difference to get a value. So I put the stock thrust washer back in the backside of the cam carrier, and now I just want to move that camshaft forwards and backwards and see what my end float readings are. So I'm going to push it forward, and that goes up to about 11, back to 0, 11. So I got about 11 thou of movement in the camshaft, and that's too much. The spec for the end float should be between 0.001 and 0.008. So 8 thou being the max, and I'm pushing 11 thou. So I got to make up at least 3 thou on this camshaft. And I do that by changing the thrust washer in the back of the housing. So if I take this off, I don't even know what's in here, but I'm going to find out. I got to take the bolt out of the back of the camshaft. Let me do that. Okay, once I take the back cover off, and I take the bolt out of the back of the camshaft that holds the thrust washer into the camshaft, I pull out the thrust washer. I believe Lotus had 4 different sizes they used, and they etched the letter A through D on these to identify them. This one kind of looks like a B, although it's a terrible etching job. You probably can't see that. But I'm going to have to measure this to really determine what it is because I can't tell from that identification. So let's measure it. All right, so yes, Lotus had 4 different options. On the thrust washer, they etch them A, B, C, D, D being the largest, A being the smallest. D is 0.179 to 0.181. And if I just do a quick measurement on this guy, I got 0.18. Unfortunately, this is the largest thrust washer Lotus offered, and I still have too much float in the camshaft. All right, so the D thrust washer is measuring at 0.18. It's not going to do it for me. It's not enough. I need one that's going to measure at least 0.22 to 0.23. Lotus didn't make one, so I'm going to think it through, but I know I can have one of these machined. I can make a custom thrust washer for this, but before I pull the trigger on that, I'm gonna think a little bit. So I was considering going out and having a new thrust washer machined for the back of the cam housing, but the more I thought about it, I wanted to find an easier solution. For 2 reasons. One, the machine shop that does this kind of work for me is like a 40-minute drive, and I just don't want to drive out there if I don't have to. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's super familiar with these engines, and he recommended, you know what, maybe you can find a cam cover, housing cover for the back with a different dimension, and that would tighten up your end float. So I pulled out all my rear housing covers, and I started going through them and trying different ones. And lo and behold, they are different. And I found one when I put it in there, and I had to put the biggest thrust washer I had on, put the bolt in, the washer, the lock washer, tightened it down, tried all the different rear housing covers, and I found one that gave me the end float I needed. Fantastic. So all I did was swap out the cover, and now we've got the end float of that camshaft dialed into where it should be. So good deal. Problem solved. All right, now on to the next thing. All right, so we fast forwarded quite a bit. We've got this build just about done. We got a few things to wrap up, but it's coming along nicely. The valve timing is, the valve clearances are all set, ready to go. So we made a lot of progress on this. We've still got probably a half a day's worth of work, maybe a day's worth of work, but it's probably going to take about 2 or 3 days because I'm waiting for just a few little things to still come in. I know, it's always the same story. We're just waiting for stuff. But this was a big build. It wasn't just the engine, right? It was the wiring harness. It was all the linkages. It's the intake manifold. It was cleaning up some of the Bosch system components, sending stuff out for zinc plating. So there was a lot to this build. So let me give you a close-up and point a few things out. So let me show you a few things on the engine that I think are worth mentioning. Okay, so let's start in the back of the engine. Oddly enough, we don't have an oil cap. Did not come with one. I'm going to see if I might have one that fits that. However, different years had different size threads, so I'm not sure I have this one. On the back of the head here, this heater hose barb, the original one was steel. It was a press fit into the head. It had corroded really, really bad. And after we vapor blasted the head, it was at the end of its life and it needed to be replaced. So those are kind of hard to get out. What I did was I cut it off flush at the head, and then I went inside and I just cut the walls down a little bit, and with a little chisel hammered out the remaining pieces of the old barb, and it came right out. And then I took a 3/8 NPT thread and threaded into the block right there. So it's actually a really good upgrade because now you can just unscrew this and screw it back in. So if you ever need to do any work there in the future, it's very easy to do. So that looks a lot better. All the core plugs have been replaced in the head. The wiring, the thermal time switch was broken, so we put a new thermal time switch in. The Bosch connectors were broken, the wires were frayed, so we redid that wiring harness. Let's see, we'll take a look in here. So we've got some vacuum lines hooked up. You can see the distributors in there. Don't have the cap on yet. I'm going to leave that off till I set the timing. I want to make sure that rotor is in the correct spot when we time the engine. Did go ahead and set the TPS, the throttle position sensor, with the factory Bosch tool. So that is set correctly. And that makes contact right when the throttles are closed and also when they open up. There's a certain degree when they open, it makes contact again. And that's fed into the ECU, and the ECU responds accordingly, and it helps adjust the Bosch components on the car. Coming around, we had that dipstick zinc plated, so that looks good. All the fittings are zinc plated. The brackets, alternator or the air conditioning bracket. Still, I'm waiting for the stainless steel hex head bolts to button this up. Come around the back here. New wiring harness wrap all the way around. For the starter, there's actually 2 feeds that go to the starter. One's the brown, one's the red ignition. Combine those into one. So we've got one attachment to the starter that cleans that up a little bit. And then this attaches as well. This is for the Bosch system. Coming up here, all the hoses have been vapor blasted. Yeah, you can vapor blast these old rubber hoses and it makes them look brand new. They get a beautiful sheen to them and they look great. Still need to put some hose clamps on. But that's looking good. Got the 104 gears for the cam carriers. I still need to put those on. Oil pump is feeling very good. All rebuilt. Took that 100% apart. Have to put the front seal and the rear main seal on. And that's a job for tomorrow. I stopped here today. This is as far as I got. But coming around here, it's another shot of the intake. And those cam carriers. And you know, you want to be careful when you use the Loctite. I always try to eliminate ooze of gasket material. So you can see on the connection point here, the flange between the two, it's nice and clean. So you don't have Loctite coming out and you hit it by accident and then you get red everywhere on the engine block and it, or on the head, and it just makes it look really bad. Now when I get the bolts in for the plenum here, what we're going to do, we even took apart the wire harness holders and had those zinc plated again and put the rubber back on to make them look nice and new, nice and fresh. But we're going to tuck this harness up. It'll be kind of underneath the plenum when it's all said and done, so you won't really see it. I did notice the intake manifold, 25376, did not come with the engine. Engine is 23613, so this is from a different car, but that's okay. That's okay. As long as the throttle bodies stay with the intake manifold, because these are tuned at the factory as a set. That's what you want to look out for. So mission tomorrow is to get the front end all buttoned up. We're going to put the, well gosh, everything on the front of the engine. We got to do the air conditioning compressor. We've got to do all the gears, the water pump, the front housing, the alternator, and the air pump. So all that will go on tomorrow. We got some fittings that are zinc plated to put into there to clean that up. And then the last thing we'll have to do is take the engine off the engine stand, and then on the back of the engine we'll put the rear main seal cover on, and I still need to replace the spigot bearing back there, so we'll do that as well. And then we'll put the flywheel on and the clutch and the pressure plate, and the engine will be ready to ship out. So we're super close. I'm happy with everything. It's a great motor. It specced so well. This thing was rough when it came in, but I'll tell you what, it's leaving and it was rough when it came in, but it's leaving in great shape. So I'm in the middle of getting ready to ship this thing. Engine's done. I'll give you a close-up of that. Came out really, really good. It's going out to Seattle, so we got to make sure it gets there in one piece. We don't want any damage. We want this thing secure. I'm expecting the worst during transit, so I'm going to take precautions and maybe over-design this box a little bit so I know this motor's not going to move. But right now I have the motor mounts on, and I've bolted the motor mounts down to 2x4s, and all that is attached to the pallet. So if I try to move this thing, it's solid. It's really solid. It's not going anywhere. So that's good, but I also want to enclose it so I can insure it. So what I found in shipping these things, if you just put an engine on a pallet, you could ship it like this if I wrapped it up with some shrink wrap, but you can't insure it. To insure it, you got to have an enclosure. So we're building an enclosure. Right now, you know, I just have these 2x4 frames here. They're not attached yet. I'm trying to get an idea of what I'm going to do. I think this is good enough, and I can get some plywood, some thin plywood for the outside walls, and then screw a top on it. So when the motor is delivered, they can unscrew the top and take this thing apart and get it all out. So in addition to the motor, I've got to put in here, this is the Bosch mixture control unit. That's all cleaned up. It was, well actually when I took it apart and I took the fuel distributor off, the plunger was actually in good shape. It was moving well. So the inside of the fuel distributor was good, but the inside of the control unit where the fuel plate moves up and down, that mechanism was all gummed up. There was a lot of junk in there, and it took a lot to get that cleaned up. But this is all clean and ready to go back on the engine. So we're going to fit this in here as well. But let me give you a little close-up of the engine. The box in front, some parts that came with the engine that don't actually attach to the engine. So we've got some stuff in there like the exhaust manifold bracket, a few other items. Actually, I can't remember exactly what's in that box. Let's look, because I don't know. Oh yeah, some just miscellaneous stuff. So you got some Bosch stuff in here. Vapor blasted all this. It looks really good. Got some new hose clamps for them. This goes on the mixture control unit as well. And then we've got before you put the transmission on the engine, you got to make sure you put this little bushing on the output shaft of the transmission before you mate them up. So that's in there as well with a little note. And then there's that exhaust bracket. Get a good shot of the front there. I had to put on a used vacuum pump. We just couldn't locate the original vacuum pump, so we've got a used one on there for right now, but it should work. And also, that is a air conditioning tensioner from a different motor as well. The motor didn't come with one of those, but that one, the bearing's in great shape, so that should work well. Coming up on top, I tried to 3D print a couple of these wire separators, and they broke. So I'm in the process of trying to figure that out again. I think I need some stronger media for the 3D printer. And I'd like to get them a little closer together too. The spacing between them is just a little more than I was hoping for. Yeah, so that was the broken line. Had to replace that. Came out pretty good. But she's getting boxed up, ready to head out. Yeah, okay. That was an abrupt end, I know. But that's only because I'm the best editor on all of YouTube, right? So that's it. That's the end of this build. Motor's heading out of here. But hey, I'm going to leave you with a couple photos before and after, so you get some snapshots of what it looked like when it started and what it looked like when it was all finished. All right? All right, till next time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.